The Leisure Suit Larry Laffer timeline. You know, this is a good, fun series of games if you don't take it too damn seriously. It's the kind of series that also gives hope to people who have lousy luck when it comes to the dating scenario. You don't have the confidence to go out and try and date someone. This is a game that'll give you that. This is a series that'll give you that confidence. Now, really, I mean, when you think about it, this all started as a remake of a text adventure that was called Soft Porn Adventure. Except when Al Lowell got a hold of it, he used his experience in jazz clubs and the lounge scene, as well as being, allowing him to be away from teaching children, to create this farce of the single lifestyle. And remember, this is what it is. It is a farce. It is a joke on a lifestyle that we call the dating scene. So, where do we start? Well, we start with something simple. Larry is the 40-year-old virgin. In a time when it wasn't made, you know, when it wasn't hip to be a 40-year-old virgin. Before Steve Carell made it a thing to be proud of. I think it was Steve Carell. Larry was your typical nerd. There's no better word for it. He was a nerd. He didn't know there was a sexual revolution. He missed out on it. His mindset was stuck in the 70s, thinking that the premiere of dating was wearing a 1970s polyester leisure suit. And thus began, well, his transformation. He sold all his earthly possessions and left home for lost wages, the city of sin. A mockery of Las Vegas, if you ask me. Of course, since I was writing a series of stories based off these games, which I should get back to, at the time of this recording, I should get back to them. Larry basically goes about it the wrong literal way. He takes all his earthly possessions, sells his possessions, and goes to basically Sin City. Yeah, that place would eat him up alive. He goes to a seedy bar, lefties. You can tell it's a seedy bar because, and above the bar there's a prostitute and a pimp behind a door that needs a password. Larry runs into a wino in the town. We have your standard jokes that go with Las Vegas. First time getting prophylactics. And let's face it, there was probably a time when all of us guys out there was buying our first condoms, and you're afraid somebody's going to see you that who you've been bragging to that you've been doing it. Yeah, right. You get your joke that people don't buy Playboy for the seeming. I'm going to buy it for the articles that nobody ever believes. But yes, there were articles in those magazines, in certain one of those magazines. And, Larry basically goes through his adventures trying to hook up with women with, of course, various degrees of failure and success. I mean, while he loves the quote swinging lifestyle, there is a part of him that wants something a little bit more. Well, I mean, let's face it. He meets up with a woman who's basically running a marriage scam. He meets up with, the hooker, and if you don't take proper precautions, it's the last time, depending on the version you play of the first game, he either turns green and dies, or his manhood goes kerblooey. With the typical jokes that go with this kind of scenario. I mean, yes, you're alive, but is life worth living? And for many people, this is going to be their first time being introduced to the concept of Spanish fly. I mean, my first was hearing a Cosby routine, which, given everything that happened with the man, I look back on with, trepidation. But it was also proves that how some of these stories get about. You still don't understand how person in playground A and person in playground B, separated by about 200 miles, have the same story about how they first heard about something. So, Larry eventually finds a woman, which, under normal circumstances, he doesn't get in there the right way. Let's face it. But it somehow works. And he thinks he's found Miss Right. And in the period of 2 weeks, set between between the first and the second, Larry has, quote, moved in with her. Not that he has much to carry. The second game, of course, she tosses him out because she didn't view it as something serious. And the second game is much more linear because Larry is now, again, a swinging single. He's trying to find Miss Right, or the girl of his dreams. I mean, you can tell it's the girl of his dreams because he has a daydream while at the barber shop running along the beach with a naked woman. Of course, Larry, like the luckless sap that he is, or lucky sap, gets mixed into the spy game. I mean, let's face it, that was a trope for a series of time where the mild mannered guy gets pulled into the spy game by sheer dumb coincidental luck. Of course, this all happens after Larry managed to think his way into winning the lottery, winning a cruise on a dating game show because somebody didn't realize he wasn't the person they were looking for, and then through miracle of plot armor and the salacious luck of if it can go wrong, of the law of Murphy. You know, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong with the correlate at the worst possible time. Of course, it going wrong for the lottery company and going right for Larry. Larry wins the big prize, $1 million a month for the rest of your life, which in turn, of course, falls short. But now Larry's gotten mixed up in the spy game. He is on a cruise, not with the woman that he was hoping to be with. She came down with, a case of the. I want the other guy. I want the guy I really wanted. That's what it was. She only picked him because, like, she likes to say, and when she said, "Yeah, I know," I know which bachelor I want, would like, which bachelor number I'd like, I want, like, two. That kind of thing. Well, of course, as Larry's on the cruise ship, he's also trying to avoid Barbara, the, the bachelorette's mother, as Larry's not ready for the the more alternative lifestyles, at least at that point. But Larry must, of course, get off the ship. I mean, literally, he's got to be afraid of falling asleep in his bunk room. But once he's able to get off the ship and survive the 2 weeks at sea he'll be adrift, he lands in another country, one that has a nude beach, a jungle that, as you pass through it, you either end up at a hotel, at a barber shop, or at a restaurant. And of course, Larry has to survive and get past KGB agents, revolutionaries. Because that's what'll happen if he tries to hit on the maid. I mean, it'd be a successful conquest for Larry, but he won't live long to enjoy it or to bask in it. Well, getting everything he's going to need to progress. And this was one of those nasty things about this game. You could, I don't know, maybe it was set that you couldn't forget anything. Or actually, you could forget something. Actually, you could forget something. Because Larry, once he gets past the KGBs and the dangerous cliffs, which you will not die while crossing those cliffs, but you're not going to get to keep all the points that you earn for barely surviving. But once that is done, we get to an airport, which, well, we have to do something to clear the lines, as well as keep them from coming in. And once we get our ticket and make it to our plane, we got to avoid another dangerous situation on the plane and get off the plane and land in the beautiful island of None Tonight, where we are eventually going to meet up with the main quote villain of the game, Dr. Nonoki. But of course, as it plays out, he also runs into the natives after escaping the jungle, which is done in steps. Of course, we get through, run into, of course, a tribe there, where we meet the girl of his dreams, who is, yes, topless. Well, they fall in love. Larry has to prove his worth to the tribe. And they, of course, have their own way of doing things. And of course, the only way that Larry can truly impress them is because for some reason they have a love for technology to an extent. And then the chief puts it in, says to Larry, I can only let you marry my daughter now if you defeat and rid us of Dr. Nonoki, who has captured our women. Well, Larry then succeeds in that by dumb luck. Breaks the control that Dr. Nonoki has on the women. We meet Passionate Patty, who at that time is only known as Polyester Patty, before moving on, seeing the lady, Larry get his hero treatment and becoming the chief's son-in-law. And of course, months pass. The people of None Tonight realize their dream of turning their home into a corporate mock-up with hotels, restaurants, casinos, that stuff. They found native ink. Larry's, of course, high up in the company because he's the chief's son-in-law. Until as the time passed, and Larry's wife fell out of love with him. Of course, there's certain things that they can't can't deny even though the chief basically runs everything on the island. This is why Larry can't really now find a job or, quote, live long on the island, I don't think, unless he finds a way, or finds someone that's in good standings. Of course, they might not be in good standings afterwards, but he meets up with Patty again. And of course, he's got to, use his wits to survive and finally get a chance to be with Patty. Things, of course, take a comic turn back to the series' roots of, Larry's attempts to woo women. But the first half of the game is Larry trying to woo and, finally get with Patty. And the second, well, after an intense lovemaking session, which, yes, that's what happens. Patty manages to mumble about the name of her previous lover enough to devastate Larry, and Larry basically goes into the bamboo forest maze. There, and Patty goes after him. Again, a perfect example of make sure you have everything with you, or you're not going to be able to continue. Of course, as Larry makes his way, as Patty makes her way through, she's got to use her wits, and part of her journey is basically as an extended strip show. Towards the end, what even happens is that she's got to take a log down the river, where she's got to avoid rocks in the river, other logs in the river, alligators in the river, and worst of all, children in inner tubes. Of course, at the end of the ride, she ends up captured by the lesbian cannibal Amazon women, thrown in a cage with Larry, and they escape using a magic marker, ending up on the Sierra Studios lot during the production of King's Quest IV. Yeah, it's the weirdness, but it just fits with the series. Like I said, it's a series you can't take seriously. And then what happens is as they start working with new interfaces and all that, and so they remake the first game, and we have the fifth game being made. The fifth game, the remake of the first game, actually has a reference to one of the key items of the fifth game. You see, we rejoin Larry, no longer, staying at staying someplace with Patty while they live in happy bliss while Larry is programming his adventures for Sierra. No, he's now working at a cable company, Porn Prod Productions, I think, or Porn Productions, something like that. As they are looking for newest, the host for the new program, America's Sexiest Home Videos. And it was decided that the three finalists, instead of having them, filmed out and sent out, brought into the company, you know, put up room, board, everything, all expenses paid. It is decided that what they need is to audition these three women, without letting it be known they're being auditioned. Because that's what they want. They want a woman who wants it so bad that they'll do it even with the most unappealing man out there. Of course, during this meeting, when they're discussing this, they call for coffee, and who brings it in? Larry Laffer. Hence, it is Larry's job to, quote, find these women and, quote, audition them. Meanwhile, at the same time, Patty is trying to get her foot in the door with the music industry. But all she can do is play piano at some sleazy nightclubs. And she's hardly even getting her money for that, thanks to the owner of these clubs, Julius. And of course, the big owner of the company that Larry works for is known as Mr. Big, who is also in the mafia, the head of the mafia. Getting his toe in everywhere so he can control everything. Hell, he's even donating to Kane's Citizens Against Nearly Everything. He's got his. In fact, Julius has his fingers also in a lot of the music industry, which is the FBI hiring Patty to basically get the information they need. She's the right type of person for the job. Expendable. So while Larry is going along the East Coast from New York City, Atlantic City, and Miami, Patty is going between Philadelphia and Baltimore. Larry's traveling by plane, Patty by limo. Yeah. It sounds like the FBI. Well, it's for cover reasons, of course. Now, of course, Larry has to find these women and, quote, audition them. For one, it's tracking her down. It's tracking her down at the Hard Disk Cafe. Obvious pun on the Hard Rock Cafe. Another, who does mud wrestling at Tramp Casino. And no, I didn't mispronounce it. This was before the person was president. And the other is obviously a woman from a foreign extraction trying to, you know, on her work visa and try and get a green card. All this so Larry can record them to be picked so that they can be decided upon by the executive producers to be the next host for the show, or the host for the new show, or hostess. Meanwhile, Patty is also trying to get the information she needs, including making the music producer drunk and also trying to get recordings of rap bands with their over-the-top lyrics. And of course, because it's Patty, there has to be some humiliating strip scene. And also, probably one of the rare times that the quote blackface can be used, probably product in a not so offensive manner. Case in point, Patty, because this is what happens in that section. Patty is trying to copy information so she can take it. She's using the nearby printer or copier. The copier goes kerblooey, basically dousing her in black ink. Oh, look, there is a shower in the room, in the office. Patty, quote, slips off, takes off her clothing to, quote, use the shower. Showing that it's only ended up on her arms, her lower legs, and her face and neck. This shower is actually an elevator. And of course, the offices which appear unoccupied, all of a sudden there are guys in every office window looking at the naked babe in the glass elevator. Of course, at the bottom is the typical rap costume of the late 80s, early 90s. So she takes the opportunity to use this to go around the studio and so she can get, maybe find a recording. Like I said, it isn't meant to, quote, it's not meant to poke fun at the African American community. It is literally the comedy of errors. Just allowing her an opportunity. Of course, the recording of the rappers singing their songs is a little bit more credible than the paper, extra evidence than the copying of the paperwork. Of course, when she takes all her information back, and as Larry's heading back to the West Coast, as it just so happens, he manages to save the plane due to Again, he has slight background at flying, thanks to flight simulators, and he manages to push the button that stops all the chaos from happening of the plane. Thus saving the mother of then Vice President Dan Quayle. Because that's when this game was made. This in turn makes Larry a guest of honor at a special function, one that Patty will be performing at, thanks to the help she did for the FBI. Also, we find out that there is someone there to testify, about the whole corruption of the industry. A whistleblower, Julius Big. And then we have the whole shebang. He offers Patty the position of hostess for the new show. Larry catches on. Patty recognizes that Julius is whistling the theme from Leisure Suit Larry 4, which has caused Larry to have amnesia because it never got made, and the floppies are still missing. So after Patty manages to, quote, defeat Julius, and Larry managing to save the vice president's life this time because, let's face it, Julius is sitting near them with a gun pointed at Patty. Patty uses her, quote, gun bra. Yeah. And of course, Larry and Patty are reunited. They get a trip to Camp David. Congress is still looking into the issue of suggestive stuff in our music and television and movies. And of course, it's deadlocked. Well, not deadlocked. They're still looking into it. And we move on then to Larry 6, where Larry again gets pulled into a game show. Because he's at the local beach exercising his eyes. Well, Muscle Beach, and he's exercising his eyes, you know. TV producer comes up in an extreme stretch limo. I'm looking for a good man. Yeah, muscle-bound guys run up and out of my way. To be on the new show Stallions. Never mind. And of course, Larry's supposed to lose. And not only has he blown it, not only does he loses epically. And he gets the auxiliary prize of a 2-week stay at La Costalada Spa. Of course, Larry must make it the best of his time at La Costalada Spa, trying to meet with the ladies there, all names who are somehow miraculously names of wines. And each of these interactions also manages to land him something that he will need to, quote, successfully woo the lady in the penthouse. This time he gets up there by dumbwaiter. The lady in the penthouse being Shamira Payne. And again, this is more a return to basic Larry. I mean, 2 and 3 were pretty much straightforward in somewhat straightforward in what you had to do. 1 was more round robin. I mean, there was a certain order that you could had to do things in. And 6 pretty much returns to that with a certain sort of mix of you can do go after certain ladies in a certain order. And of course, they all go epically bad for Larry. I mean, one lady he has to woo is the woman in charge of the high colonic. Larry doesn't understand what high colonic means. He learns fast. And like anybody if you've never had a high colonic before and don't know what it is going into it, you're in for a nasty surprise. Yep. You find out about all the ladies there and the other people there. I mean, you find out about Shamira, how Burgundy, she wants to be, well, she doesn't necessarily want to be singing in a place like that. We meet Cavarici, who is obviously, she wears a shirt that is, according to the game, was a USMC shirt. But it's sort of cut off just about halfway down. So at first you may even think it says homo. But she has a good Marine Corps attitude. And she and Burgundy hit it off. Unfortunately for Larry. Larry ends up last in a one-man race. We meet other people, and there are also lovely playful nods to other things and culture items, reference to the movie Porky's. Some classic poking fun at places like spas. You know, healthy diner, healthy diner, healthy diner. You go in the back. Yeah, not so healthy. A laugh of a liposuction thing there. And of course, Larry is trying to meet with every woman there. And like I said, each gives you something that is to elevate, that could be considered elevate. Hell, the woman that's obsessed with bungee jumping, she's addicted to the rush you get from it. Yeah, what she do? She gives you some of the most profound words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. Yeah. You never know what these words are because they're, quote, whispered. But the sheer shock of them makes Larry sort of stumble backwards and end up doing the most epic bungee. Oh, and this bungee ladder is epically long, comically long. But it works in tune with how the Larry franchise is. It's humorous. Watered down alcoholic drinks because it's being served by a swimmer goes underwater. Don't ask me how they're delivered. Also, they're not alcoholic because that's not healthy. We have a woman who that's really into the, you know, dominatrix, who she wants a pair of handcuffs, and the only place you could get them is to get them off of one of the guys, the security guard. But if you don't do it when he's distracted, you get a rocket up your ass. Again, it just shows how surreal it is. Also playing on why is it that you always get the room next to the noisy ice machine? That kind of thing too. Also has one of the most humorous deaths in the whole series. You grab the brochure with the naked women in it. You grab the hand lotion off the cart. You sit in the bathroom. You're there right now, and you know. And of course, because it's all windows, but nobody's really looking up there. Of course, as you're doing it, yeah, everybody shows up. Also, it has one of those moments that could some would consider transphobic. Of course, it all boils down to the surprise of the moment, that kind of thing. I mean, you got a person who's partially through the process of going from male to female. That's the best way I can describe it. However, as everything all plays out, mm, all that, you finally manage to woo Shamira. And you find out she's a virgin. She's been so obsessed with making money and all that and proving herself in the world that she's never, quote, been with a man. And of course, that is where Larry 6 ends. And yes, our ending has fireworks and stock footage. Because that's how you get past that. You never really see much of Larry doing the deed. And even in the times that they would dare even show it, it's either silhouette, more implied, and always comedically having something go wrong halfway through it. It's just how it is. And it continues on with that when we get into Love for Sale. Because, of course, Larry has to have the encounter with Shalmyra goes epically wrong. Larry doesn't sort of convinces her through his lackluster skills that making money is more important. And of course, she gives him a cigarette, lights it, shoves it in his mouth, he spits it out. And of course, the whole apartment the penthouse is now on fire. Larry has to escape, and in the process, he finds a ticket for the HMS Bouncy. Or did they name it the PMS Bouncy? I can't remember right now. And so now Larry's on a cruise ship taking part in a competition to spend the next week riding with the captain. And to minimize the chance of cheating, everybody who competes is given 6 different events. So of course Larry now wants to woo women and win this competition to spend a week riding on the captain with the captain. So he has to rig things in his favor. Turn the prim proper librarian into a nymphomaniac. All it takes is just switching a book cover on a book. We got a parody of the Judds, known as the Jugs. And of course, every name is suggestive and a pun on a big star at the time. I mean, we have an expert on mechanics, did her thesis on Anton Fokker, real person who managed to synchronize machine guns to fire between propeller blades on old biplanes in like World War One and that. We also had, yeah, that's Drew Barrymore. We have Doomy Moore, who spends the time eyeing the craps table and looking for easy marks to take all their money, especially if they're doing well. You even have Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously pun on Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie Lee Curtis is a fashion designer whom Larry convinces to go with the polyester leisure suit. Retro is in, you know. Retro is chic. The only time he's been chic. And of course, he's got to win, like, his 6 competitions are horseshoes, bowling, lovemaking, ba- uh, baking competition, best dressed man competition, and what was the 6th one? Best dressed, horseshoes, baking, lovemaking, bowling. What was the last one he had to win? Yeah, I used to be able to name all 6 competitions without looking them up. You know, that's going to bug me now that I can't remember it. Oh, it's craps. It's craps. Now I remember. Jesus. They all tie into, somehow getting with one of these women, or getting with them helps him get something that he can use to win these competitions. I mean, he's got to do the whole thing with the jugs to get something so he can cinch a win with horseshoes. He's also got to be with at least one of these women before he can get something to get a fake ID. Now here's a kicker. It's the whole catch-22 logic. They surrender their passports when they get the rooms. Larry's room is a real stinker. In order, if they want to get their passport back, they have to provide photo ID, which in this case would have been the passport. So how the hell do you get your passport, which is your photo ID, by presenting photo ID, which is your passport? It's a catch-22 situation. Of course, once this is all done with appropriate jokes and a good slew of clever comedy. I mean, you got a guy on there on the ship. His name's Wang. But he has a definite Irish accent when he has to put on being a Chinese accent. You see, Wang's parents were Buddhist missionaries that went to Ireland. So he grew up with an Irish accent. You know? There's also a parody of Where's Waldo in the game. Where's Dildo? Which finding all those unlocks special wallpaper. Every conquest you got at the time the game came out, you got a different wallpaper for your desktop. With the starting one being the Leisure Suit Larry. He even gets into he gets stocks of oil because during one of his moments he goes into a blind taste testing. Not sure what was going on, but he's convinced the blind part means everybody's blind, and of course when he hears what's going on, he's sort of like he wants to get on this action, strips down, lights go on, he sees blind. Oh, that's okay then. No, they weren't all blind, but apparently the woman there, she's married to the owner of the ship. She was looking for an easy, she was a gold digger looking for an easy payday, but the damn man is so virile, and he's like young Mr. Grace from Grace Brothers. He might not look it, but whoo boy! He's definitely a young guy, be a young man in the sack. But, she's trying to, she'd wish she'd just croak, and of course Larry manages to make him croak. But he thought he was sort of getting with the lady. Kills the man with, give him a heart attack. Uh, of course, Larry's thinking that she now doesn't want to be with him because she thinks he's gay. Of course, as it all plays out, she gives him stock so she won't, he won't rat her out. Larry's completely clueless. But he manages to, succeed, win the competitions due to trickery. Win that week with the captain when he presents that he's now the shareholders of the ship and the company. He can get her what she wants. Hey, she's happy. And of course, at the end of the game, the ship is abducted by aliens. To which we would have had an eighth game. Originally, Larry does Uranus, then later to be named Lust in Space, but it never got made due to shenanigans happening at Sierra. And the IP went dormant until somebody else bought it up and decided to bring on, try to focus it on a younger crowd and all that. Failing somewhat miserably. I mean, they made two games following Larry Lovage, and one is considered one of the biggest game flops in a long time. Which is why I haven't played them. I mean, well, I tried to play them one, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe I'll revisit it in the future. I don't know. But of course, then we have Wet Dreams Don't Dry. made by the production company, I think Crazy Horse or something like that. Crazy Bunch. They bring Larry back to again to its roots and setting it mostly in new Lost Wages. Lost Wages sort of gets a reboot. Larry's been gone for a long time. He sort of wakes up in a facility underneath Lost Wages with no clue of anything that's happened. One could say it's kind of hard to say that 2 through 6 happened. And it gets harder to say that with the next game, but Larry wakes up, arrives at Lefty's. Things have changed so much. And after a close encounter with the typical, quote, influencer of today, where she wants to try Lefty's Barbarian Brew. Larry orders it. Larry ends up rushing to the bathroom after trying it. And then she ends up in the bathroom, stuck in the bathroom, obviously blaming Larry for it. For, quote, leaving. And Larry finds a pie phone. Obvious pun on iPhone. And Larry heads out with this pie phone to return it to its owner. Bill Jobs, the head of Prune. Where he returns the phone, he gets rewarded with his own phone, pie phone, with pie. Also, he meets the lady of his dreams now, Faith Less. Yes, that's her name. And now Larry is trying to win her, but to do that, he has to get the best score on Timber. Not Tinder. So he has the guys there help him set up a profile. Yeah, it's not going to work. Setting him up as, quote, bisexual. Because he's clueless. And so Larry is trying to, get with as many people as he can to get his timber score up to the level that Fawn would, go for him. Unfortunately, in the whole process, they're getting ready to launch the new Pi phone, which is the prototype that Larry had found. But of course, it's going wrong. It's got to go through extra testing because Bill lost the phone, and Larry was the one who found it. We actually find out some other things. Now, of course, Larry's shenanigans get him into trouble. He's meeting with women to hopefully improve certain things of his own standing, and both with Timber and also, he's got to get some things together, like his own place and all that. Larry tries, of course, and of course, his first few matchups are with a rocker, a, quote, gay man, and a cam girl who's actually trying, you know, she's actually trying to get something more stable, but more, you know, nicer. She's also living in the apartment that was the prostitutes of Lefty's. We see a little bit more lost wages. We see that we got a gym there now. We have, well, a sex shop that's not doing so well, so she has a convenience store business that she's ashamed of mentioning. Of course, as Larry works his way and getting with these people and also getting help to improve things for himself, increases what he has. It helps them out, gets in trouble, gets thrown in jail, meaning a transvestite who goes there too and gets thrown in there on a regular basis, like a home away from home for her. Larry has to finagle some things because now he is another match is a lawyer as well as a woman working at the gym and a woman working at Prune. Of course, Larry's got to figure his way out of things, help the guy he was matched up with to get with the guy he likes, which in turn allows us also to get more access to the trainer at the gym, and eventually get into Prune Co. and find out, well, things aren't what they seem at Prune. The real the mind behind everything there is actually Faith. BJ's just a cover. Of course, after everything goes wrong with the new PiPhone demonstration, Faith and BJ head down to Cancun. Larry follows. And there's sort of a prophecy involving Larry to get the crazy gringos out of Cancun. Lefty's there too. And that plays out like anything else would play out in this series. And Larry gets the prophecy, goes through some, high as hell shit. Gets in there, learns the truth about Faith, and even though Faith tries to, she doesn't. Well, now she can be taken seriously as the head of a company. And she tries, of course, to get rid of Larry and BJ. Larry manages to get free, saves Faith's life from a flying chunk of debris, and just as they are about to have that moment, apparently something strikes her. She ends up in the life raft that's let loose, or escape boat. And, well, Larry saved the day. He could sort of start a life anew in Cancun. But Faith isn't dead. She may have amnesia. And she set something up while trying to get someplace safe. But because her phone was losing power, she sets up an emergency backup to send something that she's been working on to the most recent name, Larry Laffer. And this is for the events that lead us into Wet Dreams Dry Twice. What she sent to Larry was a self-learning algorithm that gets installed in Larry's PiPhone. Prune is now taken over by some Chinese or North Korean man, or Korean, South Korean or something. And of course, he has plans for Prune Co. He wants to make pie bots. Get one in every house. He could control everything. No surprise there. But what happens? Well, he needs to get the algorithm, so he gets a North Korean communist woman, Yan Mei, to seek out Faith, who also finds out Larry's looking for Faith, since Larry left Cancun because he didn't want to get married to the chief's daughter. Not Faith was still alive. And so now Larry's seeking out Faith. This Yan Mei's seeking Faith. Larry seems to have an easier time getting with women in this game. Yan Mei thinks he's some sort of super spy, fully unaware that he's actually just looking for someone he loves. And in Larry's efforts, he is trying to, get at Faith, find something called the Cavern of Cosmic Cognition, which means getting a key together that, once it's all together, looks very phallic. And of course, finding the chamber involves tricking people into thinking it's a role play. Yeah. And trying to help various people on the archipelago, including the governor of the archipelago, getting her hotel a good standing, because that influencer is there. And we see one of the most disturbing characters ever introduced into the series, Swingle, who is a parody of Tingle from the Zelda franchise. His outfit looks like that. He is definitely perverted. I mean, this guy is so perverted, even Larry doesn't necessarily want him to be around him. And as everything plays out, Larry eventually gets the keys together. He's found Faith, who reveals she hasn't had amnesia, but she's a bit happier in her current lifestyle. Of course, at this point, Yan Mei comes along, takes Faith with her back to Prune headquarters, tosses Larry, quote, into a volcano, which is incidentally what she tossed him into was the lab of Dr. Nono. This is where it's hinted that Dr. Nono is actually Dr. Nonoki. Because if you play a recording of a piano, he panics. Larry has to escape from there using a old KGB helicopter, which is ironically the only way Yan Mei can be killed. He flies it back to Lost Wages, in his attempt to save Faith. Pi is malfunctioning because, she's had this algorithm placed into her. But unlike others that have gone haywire long before this point, when Faith has been trying to figure out the bugs with this algorithm, we sort of get an idea of why Larry's Pi phone and Larry's Pi did not. Because Larry was using the Pi phone more or less to learn about the world that he was now in. He wasn't learning to wanting it to control or anything like that. It was he was learning as much from it as it was learning from him. And Larry actually genuinely cared about the Pi phone as if it was a person. We also learn that a resistance has been forming at Prune, as well with others, because Nari, the girl from one of the girls Larry gets up together with in in Wet Dreams Don't Dry, she's sort of helping head it. Lefty is also getting involved with it as he returns to loot lost wages. We rescue BJ after Larry and Faith manage to escape, thanks to Yanmei's help. They are to get things together to basically put a virus into new Pi bots to stop the AI and the Pi bots. Of course, they can't get it into it, and the Pi bot basically kills Wang. Well, he died happy. Of course, Larry then, takes Pi on, the Pi bot on, and sort of gets trapped in a virtual world with Pi, now known as Piper. And she is trying to give him the perfect day. You get asked about that during the course of the game. Of course, Faith is trying to get in there and help Larry get out of there. And once they do, Larry, there's no way to save Pi from the algorithm. And he is sad to see her go. Which really does endear Larry to Faith. And so once they've, defeated the Pi bots and all that, at the end of the game, Larry does marry Faith. It ends beautifully. And this is literally the end of the Larry saga. For now, as far as I know, there could be more coming. The Larry series of games are fun. The humor is sometimes sophomoric. But as long as you don't take it seriously, you're going to enjoy the series. Larry is trying to get more into the modern age, as some of the shit that was prevalent in the 70s and 80s dating scene wouldn't fly today. And that's part of what give this series its charm. A person that's so out of touch trying to form a relationship, even if it's a one-night stand. Larry's the guy that luckless guys can relate to. Larry has such misplaced confidence in himself. It's kind of funny that he's not aware of it. Or if he is aware of it, he just doesn't want to admit it. Larry is a very good natured person in certain ways. He's not trying to take over the world. He's not trying to gain wealth. He's not trying to gain power, which is what makes him, in some ways, likable. And why this series has had its charm. It also probably shows why there is such a love for Larry in the world of gaming. He's the kind of person who says if this schmuck can manage to get with a woman, how hard is it for someone like me? Someone who is socially awkward. And that's where I'm going to leave it with the Larry series. I'd love to see more games in this style. Because, as I said, it's a game series that doesn't take itself seriously. I mean, look at what they have you doing in some of these games. Making up a mocktail. Or making something that shouldn't be able to be made. I mean, you make a bomb out of a flammable hairspray and a barf bag. Not a used barf bag. How does that work? It doesn't. This is why the series has its charm. It doesn't even take itself seriously. I mean, who says that the plot of your game is to be that the fourth game never came out because this schmuck in the fifth game's prevented it? How does a character have amnesia because a game didn't get made? How does somebody who only managed to save an airplane that a political character's mother was in? It doesn't. It doesn't work in seriousness. And that's why these games have their charm. And that's all I'm going to say about the series. I hope you have a fun time listening to me talk about this series, which is, again, a great series in my book. And until next time, take care all and have fun. Bye.